Ladies and gentlemen, get your cocktails ready, because it's time to start the party.
Is your bar looking a little ordinary? Is it lacking something awesome? Well, head out to your local liquor store and pick up something extraordinary. Grab a bottle of Old Humble Straight Whiskey or Old Humble Special Reserve. They're clean, smooth, easy drinking whiskeys that taste the way whiskey should taste. From humble beginnings to an extraordinary finish, Old Humble whiskeys are what your bar needs today. Walk tall, be awesome, and drink humble. Old Humble Straight Whiskey and Old Humble Special Reserve. Get yours today.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, children of all ages, welcome to the show. I didn't do our theme song. It's over there. The guitar's over there. But we did. We do have a list of names, and list of names that will be on our list of our Wheel of Doom and Fortune next week, June 1st. I am your host, the Old Humble Guy. I need to move the camera up just a shade there. It looked like it was down here on my belly. We don't need that. I am the Old Humble Guy. I'm your host. I'm your friendly neighborhood sin merchant. The one who brings you all the delicious candy. Our Old Humble, delicious Old Humble Straight Whiskey, Special Reserve, and Double Oak Rye bottles, samples of which you will be able to get your hands on by entering into our Wheel of Doom and Fortune. No, Doom and Glory. Sorry, Wheel of Doom and Glory. We can't have a Wheel of Fortune. That's probably trademarked. But I need to pour myself a cocktail tonight, and my bottles are ta-da, right here. Ta-da! And I also have this beautiful little box, which I will explain shortly. But first, I'm going to pour myself a glass, of our straight whiskey. Let's have a shot, shall we? An opening shot for the show. A show which will probably get heated in the second half when we start having our discussion, our open forum discussion. But for the first half of the show, we're going to discuss the rules and terms and conditions of entering into our Wheel of Doom and Glory drawing for our flight of whiskey samples. This is the flight of whiskey samples right here. Let's have our opening shot, shall we? Cheers! And salutations. Everybody around the table is a friend when you're drinking Old Humble Distilling Company's delicious Special Reserve. All right. So this box right here, this beautiful blue box, is what the flights will come in when I send out the flights. Look at that gorgeous thing. This beautiful blue box. It is not finished yet. I'm working on it. There will be a nice logo on the top. There will be a nice logo on the inside. There will be 3 bottles of whiskey on the inside. And I'm throwing in a little bonus something for everybody. Throwing in a little bonus something. Let me open up the little bonus bag right here. It will be we'll go with the Red Label Alec Bradley cigar. We'll throw that into the bag too. The Red Label is, let's see what it tells me. Red Label is, it scored a 90. Yeah, it scored a 90 on, it's a 90 rated for fine tobacconist or something. I'm not sure where the rating comes from. I'm not really worried about it. A delicious cigar, comes highly recommended. Not my favorite, but it was the favorite one that I've had in the last month. So there you go. Enjoy your flight of samples with a nice cigar, I strongly recommend enjoying it with a friend because friends make whiskey taste better. That's what we do. And whiskey makes friendships better, usually. And if your friendship doesn't survive a bottle of whiskey, then it wasn't a strong friendship to begin with. You heard me. I said what I said. Now, how on earth do you get a piece of this action, huh? If I had a nickel for how many times somebody's asked me how they get a piece of my action, I'd have like 3 nickels. This is what you do. So I've got a list of 57 names. I've got a list of names here on my handy dandy notebook. Everybody who joins in chat for our live streams gets their name on the list. For every chat you join in on, you get your name on the list again. So we had 3 chats last week, so we have people who have been in on chats all 3 times. We had 4 live streams last week. Tuna Emperors on 3 of them. Bimbo Barbarella music program is on 3 of them. Square Table Degenerates has their name on the wheel twice. Bourbon Rendezvous has his name on twice. Vanessa Kitty has her name on twice. Katie Scrapping has their name on twice. Square Table Degenerates, they're on twice. I already said that already. Steve Erpenbeck has his name on twice. Lazy Nate has his name on twice. Everybody else, we got J. Sarge Scratchers, John Jacobs, Mick Tubis, Moose Gal's Corner. Oh, her name's on there twice as well. Moose Gal's Corner. Debbie did 9/11, Muscle Shell, Samantha Lee, Kentucky John, Walter Kurt, Johnny Bravo. Hey, mama. Oh, Johnny Bravo. Coachisms, Hot Mess Missy, and Tara Smith's Kitchen. They're all on the list. Now, chat is now populating. That is how you get your name on the wheel. So everybody in chat tonight will have their name added to the list, either another entry on the wheel or another new name on the list. And then next week, next Wednesday, during the show, we spin the wheel. You must be present to win in order to... I think I actually have the graphics of how you get on the show on the wheel. Is that the one? Let's see here. Is it this one? Did it start here? Yes, here we go. Be a subscriber. You need to get into chat. There's 2. You need to you can also share the channel or the video. If you share our 6 videos, you will get on, like this video right here. You share it. I get notified that you share it. You get your name added to the list again. Share our channel through your social medias. Tell your friends. That's kind of how we grow our market. That's kind of how we grow our subscriber base. That's how we grow our viewers. That gets your name on the list. One more time, you get another slice of the pie with your name on it. And then finally, what's the 4th one? I honest to God, cannot remember. The 4th one is, I can't even read it. It's, you can trade in your boozy bucks. That's right. That is how Bimbo Barbarella music program got onto the wheel 2 more times. She had 20 boozy bucks that she swapped out for 2 more spots on the wheel. So there you go. There's your 4 options right there above my head and in my face. The safety doc has gotten on the wheel. Holy Jiminy Christmas. Texas Joe is on the wheel. Let's cut over to our chat real quick. This will show all the names that are on the wheel. And this is a very small type. We're going to make this bigger. We'll make it 150% so it's actually readable. Will that work? Yeah. And then cut. There it is. Boom. So we've got... I'm gonna go through this list and get everybody in. We've got John Jacobs, Goddamn Bacon. I was on your show last week. That was fun, Bacon. It was fun to sit there and chat with you. Texas Joe, John Jacobs, Safety Doc again. Bourbon Ron, cheers. Thanks Texas Joe for buying the Old Humble Specs. I appreciate that. In Nacogdoches, the Specs in Nacogdoches. I was not aware that we were in the Specs in Nacogdoches. I am very glad to hear that. That is good news. I take that back. I am aware that we're at the store in Nacogdoches, but I wasn't aware that we were at that specific store. You know, I mean, I know we're there. We're in a lot of stores, but I wasn't aware that it like didn't register that it was that specific store, if you know what I mean. Appreciate that. John Jacobs gets on the list. Texas Joe is a brand new entry on the wheel. That is awesome. So I'll make sure I get everybody on the wheel by the end of the show. First, excuse me. First part of the show, though. Let's discuss the science and philosophy section of the show. So back in the day, the philosophers, the science and philosophy, scientists and philosophers would basically sit around the market, the agora, if you will, pass the bottle of grappa back and forth, pass the bottle of wine around, and discuss things. They didn't have scientific instruments. I mean, they could measure stuff. That's how they theorized about how you would determine the size of the Earth, or the distance to the moon, or what the stars were, or what the air was made of. And they theorize about this stuff and talk about it and say, if the shadows were at different angles, then obviously it's on a sphere. And then they would go out and, if they could, they'd go out and measure this stuff. That's how we kind of got the size of the Earth, the spherical nature of the Earth. By the way, the Earth is round. If y'all were doubting or wondering, it's true. The Earth is round. You can stop doubting because that's dumb. You shouldn't do that. And that's what they would do, and that's kind of what I like. That's kind of the format of our science and philosophy portion. We just sit and just theorize and discuss. I'm not so much worried about the legal definitions or legal terminology. Just we explore a topic. We think about the topic and explore a topic and unpack the topic. This is not drunk philosophy. This is not at all drunk philosophy. This is actual thoughtful thinking about a topic, thinking about a subject, and considering different options in a subject. And how we got where we are from where we were, and how we get from where we are to where we want to be, and things like that. Because early in February, what time is it? Close enough. So anyway, before we jump into the topic, last thing I want to talk about the giveaway. I'm going to finish putting it together over the course of the next 3 days. We'll have a nice picture of the final package. We have our nice little wood box. We'll have our nice little labeled sample flight of whiskeys. We have our straight whiskey, special reserve, and double oak rye. I mean, I could look at these and see what they are because as if they're my own children. I know exactly what they are. So those will get labeled, put into the box, a little note explaining what you have in the box. Your cigar goes in there with them. I'll box it up, wrap it up, ship it out. After we do the drawing, which isn't actually a drawing, it'll be a spin of the wheel. We'll do the spin of the wheel. You'll be able to join us, talk about it. And if you want to come up and join us on the Zoom, you're welcome to join us on the Zoom. And then, there you go. Safety Doc says his computer may be back June 3rd. Is that what you're saying, Safety Doc? Your computer may be back June 3rd. That means in June, we may finally get Safety Doc on the show. A bona fide, honest to God person of letters who writes books and can read. That would be awesome. I haven't had a person who can read on my show since the last time Tanya was on my show, way back in April, I think. Holy cow. And also Lisa and me. We can read. Sometimes. Anyway. So that's the format. That's what we'll do. If we have 100 slices on the wheel, we have 100 slices on the wheel. If we have 90 slices, we have 90 slices. Right now, it looks like, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, at least 34, 35, because I see Safety Doc. This will be your first time getting in on the party too, I believe. So we have at least 35 slices. And tomorrow night, we're going to be live with trivia. You have another chance to get in with trivia. You have a chance to win Boozy Bucks. You have a chance to trade in your Boozy Bucks. Friday night, we have our live music show, which this week will be Jay Bizet. Do I have his screen? I think I have it up here. It's the first one. Jay Bizet. I still have the words over my head. I need to get rid of those. Where's JBZ's screen? Do I have it? There it is. There's JBZ. I'll get him on the show real quick. Show his picture there. Boop, boop. Get rid of those. There's JBZ. That is Friday. Music starts at 6. Do I have any others to show? What is that one? Logo, be a subscriber. I thought I had a picture of our flights. Did I? No, I don't. Oh well, okay. I'll show a picture of the flights some other time. There you go. So anyway, there's JBZ. That's the show Friday night. So get in on the show. It's going to be a fun show. Tomorrow night's trivia, Friday night's Jay. It's going to be fun with Jay. Jay's a great performer, a great artist. Always enjoy listening to Jay play and watching him perform. He's a hoot. So anyway, let's jump into the topic. So last week we were talking about rights, where they come from, where do they come from, where do they go, how do we get there? Cotton Eye Joe. We were talking about rights last week, and the discussion started from rights are not granted by the Constitution. That's where the discussion started from. And people have rights all over the world. They're recognized by governments, they're recognized by societies, they're recognized. And if they are being regularly violated, usually by laws, but oftentimes just by cultural, social activities, whatever, then there are laws put in place to protect the rights. And if the laws aren't consistently enacted to protect the rights, then they, in our case, in the United States, they rise up to the Constitution, where the Constitution prohibits governments, state, local, or federal, from infringing on those rights. Freedom of speech, and in the case of the Bill of Rights, it was preventative, to prevent the government from infringing on those rights. Because the government didn't exist yet, so the government wasn't infringing on freedom of speech or anything. It was a protection of the rights that we already enjoyed, that we already had, that we already identified and chose to specifically prevent the government from taking these rights away. So we're in agreement. Generally speaking, there's a large swath of the population which is troublesome, that does not particularly consider rights as innate to human beings, but rights that are granted by the government, and rights cannot be granted by the government. That's troublesome. And the reason why it's troublesome is because if our rights are granted by the government, then the government can take away the rights. They're justified in taking away the rights, and we're not justified in fighting against those rights. But at the same time, amending amendments and adjusting, judicial findings that understand the amendments to work in different ways isn't necessarily taking away our rights. It's just identifying the rights, and I mean, restricting them is restricting them. But restricting rights is restricting rights. But also living in a society, you don't have unlimited rights. You don't have freedom to literally do whatever you want. You cannot just drop your pants in the middle of a theater and shat upon the first 3 rows. You just can't do that. That's unacceptable. Socially unacceptable, and unless you're at that specific type of show. I mean, Gallagher is famous for insisting, putting tarps in the first couple of rows because he's going to blow up some kind of watermelon. There are places where donkey shows are accepted, but we're not going to go into all that. It's unacceptable, both socially and legally, to do something like that. So freedom of speech and freedom of expression is not unlimited. Our right to vote is not unlimited. Our right to be free from warrantless search is not unlimited. However, there is one right that in the past, specifically in the past 40 years or so, has been decided that it is unlimited. And that, of course, is the well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And last week, the question was raised, what is a militia? And that was a good question. I wasn't prepared to answer that question last week. And I thought about it. What is a militia? What are militias? like specifically, a militia would be a citizen army, a army of farmers, a well-armed, ideally, army of farmers. We would want that to be the case, and because a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. But a militia wouldn't just be a guy, wouldn't just be a farmer. It wouldn't just be your neighborhood of farmers. It wouldn't be just the subdivision or the neighborhood or the town. What it wouldn't just be that. There's more to a militia than just a bunch of guys with guns, pitchforks, baseball bats, whatever you want to arm them with. There's more to a militia than that. It's certainly not just some guy sitting in his house with an arsenal of guns. I mean, this does not make me a militia. I'm not a militia. I mean, I'm barely a danger to boars and deers. There was that one. Boy, I shoot the hell out of dove. Not with that, but I'll shoot the hell out of dove. But that does not make me me and my dad and his buddies and a couple of my buddies when we would go out hunting when I was a kid. That didn't make us a militia. We weren't a militia. We weren't a militia by a damn sight. And we certainly weren't a well-regulated militia. We weren't regulated hardly at all. I mean, I was 13 shooting a goddamn shotgun into the sky. I don't think I hit a bird. Those first 3 times I went out hunting when I was 10, 11, 12, I don't think I hit a damn thing. In fact, I distinctly remember one time we were at in Natchitoches on the Red River. I drank a Coke, and this is how frustrated I was. I drank the Coke, and this is embarrassing as hell. Drink my Coke, crush the can, and I was just frustrated because I hadn't hit anything. I don't even think I'd hit the horizon all damn day long. Throw the can into the river, level my gun, shoot, and missed the can. But it doesn't stop there, because I could have been all like, yeah, I hit it. No big deal. Nope. Dog jumped in the water. Not my dog. One of my dad's buddies' dogs. Jumped in the water, swam out there, grabbed the can, brought it back to me. Not a scratch on it. That was embarrassing. That was embarrassing. I did not hit a damn thing until I learned that I was left-eye dominant. And it took me several years to know this because, you go out hunting like twice when you're a kid. You don't learn shit. I was left-eye dominant, so I was aiming there with my left eye. I had to learn how to close my left eye when I was shooting so that I could aim straight. Anyway, that's all. We weren't a militia. We weren't even close to a militia. And fast forward several years after that, I don't know, 17, 18, 19 years old, something like that. We're about to go hunting down in Brownsville, Harlingen, down on the border of Texas and Mexico. And I had to take a safety class. I had to take a safety class. I had to get my license. I had to take a safety class to get take a safety class in order to get my hunting license in the state of Texas in order to go hunt dove. I only had to take the safety class once. But I had to take the safety class in order to get a hunting license in order to use my gun to legally shoot dove. I did not have to have a safety license in order to have my gun. I didn't have to take the safety class or have a hunting license in order to have my shotgun. So I had to be safety certified to shoot dove, but I didn't have to be safety certified just to have the gun. Like, just having it was fine. But if I wanted to shoot a bird with it, then, I mean, if I just wanted to have it to, I don't know, attach it to my remote control to poke the TV, I guess I couldn't have done that. I guess poke the remote control to change channels on the TV, that would have been fine. That would have been a violation of like every safety rule you could possibly imagine. But let's get back to the question, and before I go off on some weird tangent about using a gun for something other than hunting birds or protecting the house as a remote control. There's nothing on TV, Martha. What was that? 64 channels and nothing's on. Was that Elvis Costello? Can't remember. Doesn't matter. Anyway, 64 channels and nothing on. That's going to bother me. Someone in chat, look up that song, 64 channels and nothing on. I can't remember who sang that song, but it was, if I recall, it was a good song. And if I also recall, it had an Elvis impersonator in the video. So look that up. I want to see that in chat when I come back through and read chat in about 15 minutes. But a militia. What would constitute a militia? It's obviously more than 2 or 3 people with guns roaming around. It's not your neighborhood watch. That's not. I mean, that would constitute on the baseline, I suppose, a neighborhood militia. Neighborhood watch, I suppose, would on the baseline be like the minimum you need for a militia. There's a command hierarchy. There's people in charge. There's membership. You don't just show up. I mean, there's like expected people. That would be the baseline of a militia. There's someone in charge, there's a command hierarchy, there's organization, there's membership, there's limits on scope. I guess theoretically there would be a limit on scope of the role and purpose and function. But I guess theoretically, if you could have a larger militia than that has a more general scope, but there would be a mission, a scope, a specific need, a specific thing that militia would address. And to a large extent, the State National Guard has supplanted the role of the traditional militia in the functioning of the United States and the safety of the United States. To a large extent, militias, as they were, have been supplanted by professional soldiery as it's been implemented, as it's grown throughout the United States, throughout the history of the United States. But a well-regulated militia, that's another very important key that just kind of gets glossed over. Everybody talks about shall not be infringed, shall not be infringed, shall not be infringed. Well-regulated is pretty important there too, because clearly everybody knows somebody who should not have their hands on a weapon of any sort. You know these people. You know these people that even when they get served dinner, you wouldn't give them a steak knife because they're fucked up in the head. Everybody knows these people. Even if it's your newborn nephew or newborn niece, you wouldn't give a newborn niece a pistol. You wouldn't give your newborn nephew a pistol. They can't even hold their head up. They're not going to hold a fucking pistol. So everybody knows somebody. Everybody knows somebody. Everybody. This isn't complicated. A well-regulated militia simply would keep those people out of the militia. Right? I mean, that would make sense. Even if you're on the neighborhood watch, everybody knows somebody you don't want on the neighborhood watch. Like, Mike's coming, I'm out. That guy's fucking crazy. I don't want to listen to his dinosaur stories. I don't want to talk about Star Trek anymore. And that guy's bringing a paintball gun. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here with that guy because he's not adding to the neighborhood watch at all, and he gets on my nerves. Clearly, there would be better criteria than that to regulate militia. I'm being facetious. Calm the fuck down. See, I was reluctant to do this after the events of Tuesday, yesterday. Yeah, it feels like it was 1,000 years ago. But we can talk about this without talking about that. Because I don't really want to talk about that. Because that was fucked up. But clearly, it's not really hard to draw lines on what a well-regulated militia would look like. Even if it's a baseline, like blind people should probably not have firearms. Right, Iowa? Iowa famously repealed a law preventing blind people from being allowed to buy guns. Because, blind people, that's the definition of safety, gun safety protocols. Blind people waving a fucking gun around. Mentally ill people, like people with clear mental illness, it should at least be harder. Like maybe a couple of checks. But no, not here in Texas. We repealed all that shit. Doesn't matter. Maybe if you can't vote. Maybe if you can't get on an airplane. Maybe, restraining orders. I mean, there's a real easy set of criteria that you could throw down to well regulate a militia. And it wouldn't be infringing on people's rights to bear arms. Because you can bear arms all the time in the summer. I see what I did there. I'm kidding. It's facetiousness. Shut up. Bearing arms does not necessarily mean handguns. I mean, there's swords. In some cases, guitars can be a weapon. Trumpets, they can be weapons. Anything in the right hands of a right person is a weapon. And 100% clarity on this. If somebody kicked in that door right there, that would not protect me. Not even a bit. Because it's properly secured. We got a lock on it. Got my lock. It's properly secured. Because I'm not a dipshit gun owner. I have a proper fucking lock on my gun. And they kick down the door. They're 6 steps away from, like anybody would want to. But still. Random shit happens. Car could come through the wall right here. In fact, it'd be more likely that a car came through my wall right here because the road turns here. They could, whoever's driving the car could be going way too fast, take that curb too fast, hit the curb with their outside tire, jump the curb, car spins out into my room. That's more likely to happen. That's more likely to happen. And in fact, we take more precautions against that in general than we do against somebody kicking in my door. Because, I've got bushes, I've got trees, we've got curbs. We've got precautions against that. More of them in general. And in general, if you have enough violations on your driver's license, you're not allowed to drive anymore. You take away your car. But driving is also a privilege. It's acknowledged. Driving is a privilege. Having a license to drive is a privilege. But being a member of the well-regulated militia should also be a privilege because your right to vote is also a privilege because it can be revoked, as can be your right to being secure in your property without a warrantless search. That can be revoked. If they see something suspicious, they can come right in. Your right to an attorney, competent attorney, has just been revoked by the Supreme Court. You can have an incompetent attorney and still get put to death. Judges aren't required to hear new evidence because your attorney was incompetent. That came through on Monday, if I'm not mistaken, a 6-3 decision. Yep. So, even though we do have rights, we recognize as a society that our rights have limits. Our rights have limits, especially when it comes to where our rights impede with other people's rights. Like, for example, our rights to free speech. They come up against limits. You don't have a right to libel. You don't have a right to slander. You don't have a right to incendiary comments or inflammatory comments. You don't have a blank check, unlimited right to do that because your right to free speech can infringe on somebody else's right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And somewhere in there is probably the solution. Like, we used to understand this when it came to our rights as individuals versus the right to carry a gun. But over the last 40 years or so, that whole discussion has changed. This has been a cultural shift, a consistent effort over the last 40 years to degrade our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in favor of gun companies' rights to make profits. This has been a concerted effort. The NRA makes far more money from dues from business groups, the seller side, than they do from the membership side. Until 2014 or so, when they got a bunch of money to launder. But that's another story entirely. That is a fascinating story, and I'm sure we all know it, but some of us chose to ignore it. But we used to know this, but this has been a concerted effort since the late 70s, early 80s to completely and totally redefine what the idea of a well-regulated militia and the right to own and bear arms means. And instituting any one thing today, like, I don't know, having an actual permanent director of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, isn't going to solve any problem. In fact, you could probably point to a specific date and time when the attitude changed drastically, especially among the governing bits. In fact, you could probably point to a specific location in Waco. But the instituting any one thing is not going to change a whole lot, because we've gone through a progressive 40-year degradation of our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Despite 65, 70% of the American people being in agreement that there should be common sense regulations that we can all agree on, like toddlers, blind people, crazy people, red flag people, people who aren't allowed on planes, people who you would not want in your restaurant eating with you. Like common sense baseline regulations for a well-regulated militia. People you would not want next to you in the event of a militia being called up for duty. Because again, a bunch of goobers with guns is not a fucking militia. If you have a secret list of members, you're not a militia. If you're a bunch of dipshits wearing camo hanging out in the woods on weekends, you're not a militia. You might be a hunting party. You might be a circle jerk, but you're not a fucking militia. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm the one who has to tell you this and you didn't know that already, but you're not. Militias they have a purpose. They're citizen army. They can be called up for work. But if you can't be called up for work, if your specific mission is not being called up for work by the, powers that may need militias to be called up for work, you're not a militia. You may fancy yourself to be a rebel group. And then you would be these specific people that we wouldn't want to have firearms, I mean, if the idea of background checks scares you, you're probably the kind of person we wouldn't want to have guns. Because the idea of background checks would be to weed out the people that we don't want in our well-regulated militia. The people who are unfit to serve, the people who would be unfit to work in a militia, to participate in a militia, those would be the specific kind of people that background checks would weed out. And if you're worried about a background check, if that would infringe on your ability to buy a gun, then you're specifically the kind of people we don't want having guns. You're specifically the kind of people that we don't want in a militia. And if you really, really, really want to be in a militia, I'm sure the army would take you. And if the army won't take you, there's a foreign legion in Ukraine that'll snatch you up in a heartbeat. They need warm bodies to run in front of gunfire. But, you got to actually have a backbone to do stuff like that and not just be like, oh, I want to have a gun. I'm going to shoot some fucker for stealing my rims. Anyway, a well-regulated militia is not just a dude with a gun. I'm not a well-regulated militia. I'm not even a militia. I'm picturing Ralph Wiggum saying, I'm a militia. I mean, I'm just a guy. I could join a militia. Join the neighborhood watch. They've got the neighborhood watch here. I've talked to them. I guess technically I'm a member of a paramilitary organization because I work with the Boy Scouts. An elite paramilitary organization learning survival skills. Anyway, there's a lot of things that could easily be instituted that establishes the baseline for a well-regulated militia that doesn't actually infringe on anybody's ability to buy guns. At least not the people that we want to buy guns. And if you're worried about people who shouldn't be buying guns still going out and buying guns, well, there's resolutions to that too, because they buy them from somebody. And, if you're not a licensed dealer, I mean, you can't just, there's a thriving aftermarket for alcohol, but there's also a very strict regulatory capacity for companies that sell alcohol to people that we deem aren't ideal customers for alcohol consumption. If you overserve somebody at a bar, you can lose your license. If you sell it to people who are under 21, you can lose your license. That'd be something that a full-time director of the ATF could do. A fully funded ATF, a fully functioning ATF body, could do something specifically like that. Investigate firearms dealers that sell firearms. I mean, hell, they made it here in Texas legal to sue people for $10,000 if you drive a woman to an abortion clinic. Even if you're not if you're in no way related whatsoever to that family, you could sue them. Like, my neighbor did it, I'm going to sue them because reasons. I don't have standing. It doesn't affect my life in any way, shape, or form. There's going to be some enterprising young governor who's going to do the same goddamn thing when it comes to gun violence. You can sue the store, the company, the distributor, the manufacturer, the guy who carried the gun, the guy that drove the guy to the place to shoot, the guy that gave, sue the fuck out of all of them. $10,000 a piece. And everybody who gets affected could do that. Because, you know about shootings. You don't know about abortions. Everybody knows about a shooting. Well, everybody in the neighborhood, that could be 40, 50 people right there. $10,000 a piece? That adds up quick. Especially if there's 3 or 4 people involved, like parts of the chain. Oh yeah, that adds up fast. Some enterprising governor is going to figure that out real fast, get that through his legislature. See, these things open up whole cans of worms. Now, the other question would be, do we want that to happen? There is the question of due process. You can't, of taking away, flying on an airplane is not a right. You don't have, there's plenty of ways to move around the country. You don't have to fly on an airplane, so you can be put on a do not fly list like that without due process, without any of that. That's not inhibiting your rights at all, because you can still drive. You can get on a bus. You can get on a train. You can walk. You can ride a bike. You do whatever you want. Linking something like that to a right to bear arms is problematic because of the due process question. So that's a specific issue to be concerned about, and that's a concern that should be thought over, and it should be discussed. It should be discussed out in the open and debated over. How much we're willing to limit and compromise and accept, because we have to have these discussions out in the open, but that means that all the parties involved have to actually be willing to govern and actually be willing to talk about it and actually be willing to discuss it, put it out in the open, put it out in the public space, write editorials about it, not just be protected by the other group's filibuster because you know that your perfectly practical plan won't be accepted. So do something radical to try and change, move the Overton window. But that just ends up everybody being radical, and then the Overton window gets destroyed. Look up the Overton window. I don't want to explain. So that's something that needs to be seriously considered and a serious, legitimate concern. I am not at all 0% concerned about the idea of a citizen militia, a citizen army, being used in defense against a tyrannical government, because that has never, ever, 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 ever happened in the history of the United States. And now, because we overpay and overfund our military, they have satellites that can drop darts on our house. They have flying robotic autonomous drones. They can put a Tomahawk missile up your rectum. You and your fucking citizen militia is not going to do anything. Your little citizen militia is going to get run over by a bunch of tanks. Wolverines was a part of a movie that was a fictional movie in the 80s. You're not the kids from Red Dawn. You're not. You're more likely the kids from Waco than you are the kids from Red Dawn. So let's put your head in the right place, all right? Your citizen army is not going to shoot down drones, the B-52s, the B-2s, the F-35s. I mean, citizen armies don't do shit against police officers. You're not going to do shit against the U.S. fucking Marines. So let's just dispel that notion immediately. If you want a citizen army to be effective at maintaining the control of government and stopping the spread of government, then we need to drastically defund the military. Like drastically, by like 98%. But that'll never happen, because then we won't be a world superpower anymore. Because, 10 aircraft carriers, you're a pussy, but 11, you're a superpower. That's how this works. I mean, there's a reason we don't have health care. It's so that we can see Ukraine. I mean, that's how this stuff works. My camera just froze there for a second. Hopefully it'll pop back out. Like, I don't see any lagging on my screens. What's happening? There it is. Okay, we're back. That was awesome. I said something profound. Y'all missed it. Sorry, but during the freeze, y'all just missed it. But what's also clear is that nothing does not keep us safer. Thoughts and prayers are worthless without action. And the most meaningful action you can take between now and October 8th, the most meaningful action you can take here in the state of Texas is to make sure you're registered to vote. And then the next most meaningful action you can take is to go to the polls and vote on November 8th. Because the only way, at least here in Texas, that anything will happen is if we take a stand at the polls. Only way anything will happen at all is if we take a stand at the polls. And what we believe and what we feel and what we know is turned into votes. And I don't know if the people who aren't in power right now will do anything effective, but I do know that the people in power right now won't. And I also know that the people in power right now caused my electric bill to go up to $400 during Christmas last year. I also know the people in power right now don't give a shit about that. So, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but I am going to tell you to go vote, and vote with your brain as much as you do with your ballots. Because what really protects our rights, you may think that guns and bullets protect our rights, but those do not protect our rights. What really protects our rights is ink and pen and ballots, not steel and lead and bullets. Ink, pen, and ballots always protects our rights more than anything else. So you got to stand up. You got to put people in power who will defend our rights. And not just one right, all of our rights. All of our rights. Speech, to bear arms, to be secure in our premise, to be secure in our papers, not quarter troops, all that stuff. All of the rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the only way you can do that is go out and vote. And I can tell you this, when I was out on the polls on Tuesday, watching these old gray-haired boomers stagger up to the polls like a fucking line of zombies, young people need to get out there and outvote these old people. Because these old people have been deciding these things for you since the 70s, and they have fucked it all up, and they continue to fuck it up, and they have undone everything that their parents did. They have worked diligently for 45 years to undo everything that was done by the generation before them. From labor laws to civil rights to voting rights to, or you name it, they've undone it. And if that makes you upset as a younger person, somebody who is under 50 years old, then go to the fucking polls and do something about it. And there you go. That is the end. Yeah, we're going to call that the end. And now let's go to, let's open up the chat, shall we? Let's see how many people I pissed off. I wonder how many subscribers I'm going to lose today. I'm going to go with 6. See if I lose 6 subscribers today. And I'm going to have to read the chat. So I've got to turn this light down a little. Does that help? Yeah. Change the light. That's less bright. There we go. So let's see. Great shot. You're in the chat. That's fantastic. It's good to see you in the chat. I will add you to the Wheel of Doom and Glory. Phil, was that Spicy Phil? Moose Cow there? Ghost Guy. Yes, Ghost Guy. Okay, I'm going to go far up. That was Phil. Hey, Phil. Phil, everything spicy gets on the wheel. So first I'm going to recap the wheel. Talking false history. That's really great, Texas Joe. Good to hear you. Good to hear from you, though. Just doesn't know what false history is. All right. So John Jacobs is in. Okay, so we're going to start at the beginning of chat, and I'm going to see, let's hear it, it's 10:52. That means chat is at least 40 minutes behind. I'm going to recap. I'm going to recap how to get in on the drawing. So what is the drawing? Let's remind everybody what the drawing is. The drawing, it's the Wheel of Doom and Fortune, and it is to get a sample flight of our delicious whiskey, our straight whiskey, special reserve, and double oak rye, which will come in this handsome blue box. This handsome blue box right here, which is still in the process of being constructed. But not only that, you will also get a nice cigar to go with your whiskey. And how do you get one of these? Well, let me tell you how you get one of these. Every single person who gets into chat during our live shows. So we had 3 last week. We have 3 this week. At least we had 4 last week. We'll have probably 4 this week because I'm going live tomorrow during the day with a day in the life of. You'll see that when I bottle up my whiskey. So you get into chat there. You get in on the wheel. The wheel will be it won't be a physical wheel. It'll be a digital wheel. But every time you get into chat, you have your name on that wheel. So right now we have at least 35 slices, 36 because I saw Mr. Goodshot. We have at least 36 slices on the wheel. Moose Gal has at least 3. Tuna has 3 at least. I haven't seen Tuna's name pop up, but I'm sure he's there in chat tonight. If not tonight, he'll be there tomorrow probably. But everybody will have their name on the. Is that on the screen that I'm seeing? No, it's not. Okay. Everybody will have an equal chance. We'll spin the wheel virtually, and then whoever name comes up, you win the box. So there you go. Piece of cake. Easy peasy. So we'll spin the wheel. If you're a subscriber, you've been in chat, you've shared a video or the channel, or swapped in boozy bucks. If you 10 boozy bucks, get your name on the wheel again. So every time you swap in 10 boozy bucks, tomorrow night is trivia. Trivia gives you a chance to win at least 5. You can win 5 boozy bucks, 10 boozy bucks, or 20 boozy bucks, first, second, and third place, or third, second, and first place. So the easiest way to get in is just come into a live stream and get into chat. Second easiest way, share video. Third easiest way, win at trivia and swap in the boozy bucks for extra spots on the wheel. But even if you participate in trivia tomorrow night, you get on the wheel. See how easy that is? Piece of cake. So that's how it will be done. And then we'll spin the wheel, and the wheel will be spun on June 1st. Next Wednesday, June 1st, you have a shot to win a sample flight of our whiskey in this handsome box right there, plus a delicious Alec Bradley cigar. And if you don't smoke cigars, that's fine. Give it to a friend. It's always, I say this repeatedly, it's better to have whiskey with friends, and good whiskey makes friends better. Nobody is an enemy when we're sharing a drink. We can all have a nice conversation together while we're sitting around the table discussing big topics, passing the drink side by side. And by the way, when we open up chat, we open up the forum, feel free, bring up whatever fucking topic you want. Obviously, we're talking about militias right now. If you want to talk about the school shooting on Tuesday, fine. I don't want to, but if you want to, we will. I'd rather not, but we can get there if you wish. But I'm not gonna limit it. If that's where it goes, that's where it goes. So let's discuss, shall we? Let's open up the chat. So first thing, Texas Joe up in Nacogdoches. No, Natchitoches. He said Natchitoches. No, Natchitoches is in Louisiana. He'd be up in Nacogdoches, where he picked up a bottle of my delicious whiskey. Yes, safety doc. Your name. He says a well-regulated militia means they are well-equipped and ready for action. That's not true. That's not necessarily true. A well-regulated militia doesn't necessarily mean they're well-equipped. A well-equipped militia means they're well-equipped. That's why there's two different words. Equipped and regulated are two different words. And if well-regulated meant well-equipped, it would have said well-equipped. So there you go. And ready for action would be well-prepared, a well-trained militia, I suppose. That would be ready for action. Well-regulated means something else entirely. And yes, John Jacobs, we topped 5. We were up to 562 on Saturday, but it's dripped back down a little bit. But I reckon it'll probably drip up a little bit over the next couple of weeks as well. Yes, safety doc, your name will be on the wheel. I'm going to go fast because I don't want to be like 45 minutes behind forever. Bourbon Ron is hitting the live, and you are on the wheel again as well. All these guys are on the wheel again as well. Safety doc, Nacogdoches being just north of Houston on Highway 59. Great place to go hang out. Whiskey Row or Whiskey Row? That's fine. Bacon is not invited. It wasn't exactly an invitation. It was just kind of a link sitting in there in chat, and he was like, "If you want to come up, come up." I mean, it wasn't non an invitation. It was just kind of a come on up if you want to. Thank you, Ron. I'm glad you recommended. Your wife loves it too. That's fantastic. See, I like that. I like that a lot, to be able to have a broad range of people who enjoy our whiskeys. My wife actually likes the rye too. She likes to drop the rye into coffee or cocoa. Solitude Surfer is joined the party. I'm like I said, I'm going to go. That's a new name on the wheel, so that's at least 37 slices. Did I just say shit it out? I did say shit it out. I did, in fact, say shit it out on the show. That is true. Doc, your book is not yet in the Humble Library. Lisa has the book that is going to the library. The book that I have is the book you sent me. The book she has is the book I bought from the Amazons. So as soon as she gets done with it, I will get it into the library. You have my solemn vow. That is great to hear, Ron. That is great to hear. The wife and you are both sipping on the rye. That is fantastic. Steel Wool Queen is in the party. Is Steel Wool Queen? I think you came. I am missing names from Friday. I have the names written down from Friday's stream at the distillery, and I haven't added them to this list. I don't think I've added to this list. There's some names like Steel Wool Queen. That is her second appearance. You will be back on the you are on the wheel as well, Steel Wool Queen. So that is at least, I think we're up to 40 names. I think we're in that neighborhood. Fishing Frenzy subbed and joined the the list. Let me look over here. If I go over to my main cam scene, 561. There it is. We started at 560. We're now at 561. That would be Fishing Frenzy who joined, and their name will be on the list. Well regulated means well. Okay, we already said that. That's a good point. Well regulated. If they are well regulated, they should be equipped and ready for action because properly trained, properly equipped, properly like all of that. But that also implies that they have training, organization, a command structure, and funding that implies all that stuff. And I know Texas Joe noped out and he bailed because he doesn't like our version of history, which is, fine. But that implies all that stuff. Like a militia is not just a bunch of ding dongs sitting around a campfire with guns. It's a structure. It's funded. It has leadership. It has organization. It has training. There's a structure to the militia. It's not a professional army by any stretch of the imagination, but it is certainly at the very, very, very least structured. There's a block captain, a neighborhood leader, division, whatever. There's some hierarchy, even in the civilian command corps from that's not what it's called. The civilian protective force from the 1960s, the Cold War era. There were block captains and organized hierarchy. In the event of a nuclear war, you knew who was in charge. So you knew who to go to for organizing relief efforts of the neighborhood. That was the whole point, because you didn't just want a bunch of chiefs, and you certainly didn't want just a bunch of Indians. You needed at least a few chiefs and a bunch of Indians in order to organize things and get work done. And that's the point. That's what I mean. Like, it's not just a group of people; it's a group of people with a hierarchy. Like, there's a definition to it, a definition to what the militia is. Gathered, practice, and equipped. Yeah, there you go. That's the gathered. That's a word. That's a important word too. Gathered, practiced, equipped, structured, organized. All of that stuff matters when it comes to defining a militia and what a militia is and who's in the militia. Because it's not just, like I said, it's not just you show up one day and it's whoever shows up. Like, there's a specific list of people who you're expecting to show up because you have jobs and roles and duties. Ideally, you have a treasury. Ideally, you have quarter marshals and like all the stuff you need to do. Even book clubs have that. Even whiskey clubs, book clubs, they have roles and defined purposes within the organization. That's the difference between some dipshit with a gun and an actual militia. Is that where Duck Hunt got the idea of the laughing dog? Oh, from my story of not shooting the can. And I doubt it got it from me, but I'm sure. Yeah. Now, practicing with your weapons is extremely important. Yes. Not only, that goes into the training portion with the part of the whole militia. You gotta know which end to point at the bad guys. That's important to know. That's very important to know. White Wings, Cornfield Wyoming. Yep. Moose Cow, that's a really good question, and I don't know the answer to it. So, I hope that they do. But you can see in the comment right following you, there are a whole lot of people in Texas that think more guns means more safe. And that has been demonstrated year after year after year after year after year to be false. And in fact, the NRA is having their fucking Klan rally in Houston, of all places, this weekend. And just to prove that more guns does not make you more safe, no guns are allowed at the NRA meeting. So, there you go. Stricter gun laws. See, Chicago's an interesting creature. They talk about the crime in Chicago, but they never talk about the causes of the crime and when crime became dispersed across the city when they tore down the housing developments where all the crime was concentrated. And they also don't talk about the fact that most of the crimes committed with guns in Chicago are committed with guns that were bought in Texas under our lax gun laws and sent to Illinois. So there you go. Well regulated literally does mean laws. Like regulated literally means laws. That's literally what regulated means in the Constitution. That is a false statement there. Venezuela has remarkably loose gun laws, so we're actually closer to Venezuela now than we would have been otherwise. And by the way, also, Bacon, if you want to talk about what gets you closer to being Venezuela, you want to talk about manipulating the courts first. And manipulating the courts gets us closer to being in Venezuela, which is literally what was done over the course of the last 10 years of manipulating the courts and holding out open spots for or holding out confirmations of judges in order to increase the open spots on the bench so that you could pack the court with judges when you got the opportunity, which is exactly what happened over the course of the last 10 years from about 2010 forward. So, yeah. Good dinosaur stories. I mean, good dinosaur stories are the great kind of dinosaur stories, but the really annoying dinosaur stories are the ones that, I mean, everybody knows that guy. Everybody knows that guy. I mean, I'm just saying. We all know a guy. I mean, everybody knows a guy who you do not want to go over to his house because he gives you that dangerous vibe. He gives you that creepy dude dangerous vibe. You like go over to his house and he's like, "You want to see the gun vault?" Like, "No, Franklin, I really don't want to see the gun vault. Thanks, we're just having wine. I'll see myself out." Just Jesus Christ. Or, tries to change a channel with a bow and arrow. And it's like, you're just dangerous, man. You're just dangerous. And it's a different kind of dangerous than the guy who straps black cat firecrackers to the June bugs. But it's not very different. Because we all know that guy too. Shark Homebrewing gets in on the party. We get Shark on the list. Shark is new to the list. Fantastic. Well regulated partially means well equipped, but well equipped means well equipped. Well regulated means something else entirely. Don't really care about what you learned as a little girl in Chicago. Yeah. Respect is learned clearly and sometimes forgotten. All right, keep on rolling. How far back are we? I'm curious. Stick to my day job. Okay. Muskets, stick to your day job. See, Shark, comments like that tell me to stick to my day job. I assume you're telling me to stick to my day job, and there's like two ways I could take this. I could look at it and go, ha ha ha, funny. I could also look at that and go, ha ha, fuck you. Because I can do telling me that I shouldn't bother with commentary and discussing things like this and having a community, I mean, fuck you. You can stick to your day job and get out of the comments entirely. I mean fuck you. Or I could take it as ha 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 ha. I'm sure you didn't mean that. So there we go. Franklin board or stick. A freaking board or stick can be a yeah, all kinds of stuff can be a weapon. And just saying that you can't get a specific kind of firearm does not prevent you from having a weapon. Unless you're beholden to the gun lobby, in which case guns are the only weapons that exist. Moose Gal, it is extremely easy to get a firearm in Texas. I can wake up in the morning, have my breakfast, go to a shop, get a gun, and before the end of lunch, wipe out an entire office of people. That is how easy it is in Texas to get a gun. And if there's an actual convention, a gun show in town, oh, it's even easier. Not just like a handgun or something. I could get a whole trunk full of guns. Cash on the barrel. I can get plenty of exotic stuff, not just like rifles and stuff. I can get like really cool stuff. It's extremely easy, but it's not just Texas. It's in most states. There's the gun show loophole in most states where you it's literally peer-to-peer transactions, and peer-to-peer transactions are 100% unregulated. I bought this, but the pistol that I have, I didn't buy that. That was my dad's. That was his service revolver. The 22 that I have was his. One of the shotguns that I have was his. The other shotgun I bought. And I could take this to my neighbor and sell it to him for $400, and it's gone. It's out of my hands, and nobody can regulate that sale because it's a peer-to-peer sale. Just like I could sell a bottle of whiskey to somebody. Me personally, I could sell a bottle of whiskey to somebody for whatever, $30, $40. Peer-to-peer sales are completely unregulated by any branch of anybody anywhere. Well, see, Bourbon Ron, there were a bunch of politicians at that press conference. That's why politicians go to press conferences. That's why Ted Cruz and Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick and John Cornyn and Bill Paxton, not Bill Paxton. Bill Paxton is an actor. Our AG Paxton, whose first name I'm forgetting. That's why they were there, was so that they could spout their agenda. They weren't there they didn't have to be there. There was no reason for them to be there. The Uvalde mayor was there. He could have handled it. The sheriff was there. The local law enforcement and local governance, they could have been there. But there was cameras, so Abbott needed to show up and grandstand and spout his agenda that this could have been worse. Are you fucking kidding me? He has a press conference and he tells people that this could have been so much worse. It probably wasn't the most politically expedient thing to do for Beto to show up at that thing and confront them directly. But if you've ever tried to call the governor's office or Cruz's office or Cornyn's office or Paxton's, if you've ever tried to call any of their offices, you know good and damn well you can't get through. If you do get through, you're leaving a message on the voicemail. If you've ever tried to contact them, you can't actually contact them and voice your concerns. And the only way your voice gets heard by them is if you confront them in a public space where they're at. Because otherwise, they're not going to hear your voice. And yeah, it was probably a political campaigning type of stunt, but he's running for governor. And somebody needs to confront these guys and tell them to do their fucking job. This experiment of doing nothing again and again and again and again and again and again and hoping is not working. Thoughts and prayers are not doing anything. Thoughts and prayers do nothing without action. And they prove it again and again and again that this ongoing effort of doing nothing is not actually changing anything. It's just, and in fact, they're not doing nothing. They're actually taking away signposts and bumps in the road and curbs that otherwise would be in place to slow down this stuff. So Muscle Shell's in the party. He is already on the list. I'll add him again. But this effort to do less and less and less to further deregulate and put more guns on the street, and it makes it dangerous for law enforcement. It makes it dangerous for normal people, you and me, just walking the streets. It makes it dangerous for normal people just doing their jobs. And we worry and fret about terrorists coming over and having a. When terrorists come over, all they got to do is walk down the street and arm themselves. We armed them. We make it so easy for them to do stuff. It's just, this notion of doing nothing, and somebody should confront them. Somebody should absolutely stand up and say, do your fucking job. Enough with the thoughts and prayers. Do your job. You're in a position to do something. And you just shrug your shoulders and go, dead babies, that's the price of freedom, unless you're a woman, and then we're going to regulate your womb. It's just madness. It's absolute madness. And I don't, that's just what it is. And we have the opportunity in November to say that out loud at the polls. And like I said, I don't know if the other party is going to do anything, but I know that the party in power is not doing anything. And Mike Collier could be a disaster as a lieutenant governor. Garcia could be a disaster as an attorney general. Beto could be a disaster as a governor. And if we don't flip the legislature, it doesn't matter. Doesn't fucking matter if we don't flip the legislature. But it changes the narrative. And it makes it harder for these people to just parrot out the same goddamn talking points and have person after person after person after person get in front of a microphone, get in front of a camera, shrug their shoulders and go, there's nothing we can do about it, when there literally is something. They could do anything. Anything. They could at the very, very minimum, say, you know what? Red flag laws. If you have a restraining order, there's already been due process. There's already been, you've already had due process. You've already gone through court. You've already got a restraining order. We're gonna search your house for guns. That's it. Because the greatest single threat to women is men, specifically men with restraining orders. Why they have a restraining order. That's something. It's not gonna prevent school shootings, but it's something. It's a drop in the barrel. It's a start. It's a step in the right direction. And like I said before, this is a 40-year cultural shift. It took us 40 years to get here where we're at, where the powers that be degraded and removed and softened and changed the narrative over the course of 40 years to get to where we're at, to where people stand up and say that guns have more rights than human beings. That guns have more rights to exist than they have more rights to less regulatory oversight than women. It took us 40 years to get to the point where women have more regulations on their bodies than guns. And it's going to take us 40 to 60 years to to return to sanity, at least 10 years to return to sanity, to maybe tell people that, a high capacity clip is unnecessary. You can't sell them anymore. There's still going to be plenty out there on the market, but just to be able to say you can't sell those anymore. Or explosive rounds, the kind that go into your body and actually explode and rip flesh, the kind that they, I don't even know if they sell those anymore, but that was something that they said you can't do that anymore. The what was it? The bullets. It was the bullets that butterfly out. The hollow points. Yeah, when they hit you and they like open up, so they like actually tear more flesh. I think they used those on the. I can't remember if they used them on the battlefield or they were banned on the battlefield, because the full metal jackets that would actually go through the flesh and go out the other side, I think those were. God, I can't remember what it was. Like one of them, you can't sell them anymore because it was too dangerous. Like cops can't use them because they're too dangerous, and among civilian populations, if they go through, then you can actually injure somebody on the other side of the perpetrator you're shooting at. I can't remember what that is. I can't remember which one it was. So I'll stop talking about it because I can't remember. Thing about common sense regulation is it doesn't require regulation by definition. The thing about common sense is it doesn't require regulation by definition alone. The thing about common sense is it doesn't require regulation by definition alone. That's an interesting statement, and I'm not sure what you meant by that, Bacon. And if you want to unpack that a little bit more down below, feel free. I don't think we will ever get rid of the Second Amendment, and I don't know if that's necessarily a good idea. Moose Guy, I wouldn't mind modifying it. I mentioned that last week, that if you add 5 words to the Second Amendment, while in a militia, while engaged in a militia, I think that's the 5 words. If you add those 5 words to the Second Amendment, that makes it much easier. But what will end up happening, there's 2 routes that it could go. Either all right, first, if we get rid of the Second Amendment, we won't come under tyranny, because the Second Amendment has never, ever, ever been used to defend the country against tyranny, and it won't ever, ever, ever be used to defend the country against tyranny. The history of the Second Amendment is that it's been used to oppress minorities by arming militias on behalf of local governments and local law enforcement, to oppress minorities. Never has it been used to shoot up. It's always been used to shoot down, socially speaking. And that's the history of the Second Amendment. You can go again and again and again and again throughout history, and never once has the Second Amendment, because even when the Confederacy rose up, that was not local militias being, self-armed. The Confederate government supplied those weapons. Not at first. I mean, granted, citizen army rose up, but then the organized army was supplied by the Confederate government, and also weapons seized from the Union government. But also, like I said earlier, our federal government has tanks. Your deer rifle is not going to take out a tank. They have drones, jets, Tomahawk missiles, autonomous drones that can be remote flown from Arizona, that can circle above your house for 72 hours until you finally poke your head out, and then it could surgically remove it. Your deer rifle is not going to do anything about that shit. And I'll further add to the point that Ukraine doesn't have a Second Amendment, and they're doing just fine against standing up against Russia. Granted, they're doing just fine standing up against Russia with a bunch of help from their friends, but they stood up against Russia before they got help from their friends. So the Second Amendment isn't required to stand up against foreign governments. The Second Amendment isn't required to defend against a tyrannical government. And in fact, more often than not, the Second Amendment has not ever been used to stand up against the federal government. It's been used to shoot down at other people from one social standing to another social standing, not to shoot up. Because if it was used to shoot up, boy, the rich people confiscating wealth in America right now would be shitting their pants. Because that's that's a whole nother discussion to have. Night Phil, I and like I said before, I'm going to go through chat and make sure all these names are on the list. All these names are on the list, and all of them are on the Wheel of Fame, Doom, and Fortune for next week. So Phil is on the list. But back to the Second Amendment. What will likely happen? One of two routes will go. Either there will be common sense, baseline, generally accepted regulations put in place, or the fanatical amosexuals will continue to use the Second Amendment as a cudgel to prevent any of that from happening. And the only recourse will be to repeal it entirely. Because if it continues to be used to prevent, let's say, blind people from being prohibited from buying firearms, which, to be fair, the Second Amendment wasn't used to prevent blind people from, that wasn't a court case, that was a legislative decision. But if, the courts continue to say the Second Amendment allows you to have a pistol in your house, and there's just no stopgaps, there's no regulation involved, there's no well-regulated militia, then the Second Amendment has no meaning. If it's just anybody can have any weapon, anywhere, anytime, whatever, then there's no well-regulated militia, and the Second Amendment has no meaning. And something has to give. Something has to give somewhere along the line when, I guess, if enough boomers finally die off, that the next 3 generations can finally stand up and start making decisions for themselves and not have this cap of old, crusty people just demanding that we live in the 1940s still, even though they never lived in the 1940s. I guess when enough of them start dying off and the rest of us can take our self-determination in our own hands, then some laws will be passed, and finally some common sense regulation, like just the simple Brady bill that banned high capacity automatic weapons or whatever that was back in the 90s when it had finally expired and not been and wasn't renewed. If it continues on the path where there's just a refusal to do anything, then the thing that has to give would be the Second Amendment. And I think that would be a bridge we've never crossed before, of repealing an amendment from the Bill of Rights. I mean, we repealed prohibition, but that was an amendment that was added and then subsequently repealed. This would be repealing one of the foundational amendments in the Constitution. I don't know how I feel about that. That's that's kind of like getting your first divorce. It would be weird. I don't like that idea. I don't like that plan. Although I'd say, the Second Amendment doesn't necessarily protect us. It's the lobbying and the legislation and the active role that people take in maintaining the laws and maintaining the ideology and theory and this cultural change that happened since the late 70s that protects our right more than the actual writing on a scroll. But that zealous the zealous overreach could also be its own undoing, because if the ideology goes so far to prevent even the thought of mentally deranged people going into a gun shop and buying guns and shooting up the gun shop the same day, then something has to give. Something has to give. Because reasonable people, rational people, and it may take a cultural shift, but reasonable people and rational people have to be able to look around and say that we can't live in fear. And most of us don't. Most of us don't. It's not a fact of life that you're just going to go into a grocery store and a gunman's going to come in. But the reality is that it could. It could happen. And it only happens here. It only happens here. This is a problem unique to the United States. Mental illness in the United States causes people to shoot stuff. Mental illness in France or Scandinavia or Brazil or Congo or mental illness is all over the damn world. But it's unique to the United States that mental illness means you're going to kill 25 people. Or that it's unique to the United States that a guy can lose his job and murder his family before dinner because he had a bad day. It's unique to the United States. And by the way, that's what most mass shootings are. A guy has a bad day. Lost his job, lost a client, depressive, a bout of depression, manic depressive. He has a bout of a mania, then a bout of depression. Abusive partner. That is most of the vast majority of the mass shootings in the United States. Isn't somebody going into an office complex, isn't somebody going into a grocery store, is not somebody going into a theater, is not somebody going into a school. The vast majority of mass shootings in the United States, as defined by the FBI as, I believe, 3 or more deaths in the same shooting. The vast majority of mass shootings in the United States are husband, wife, children. Vast majority. And it is almost always the husband. And he's had a bad day. And it cost him, you get fired right before Christmas. So what do? You go home and you kill your wife, her sister, your kids, and their kids. That's the vast majority of mass shootings in the United States. It's not strangers killing strangers. It's not strangers killing a room full of people. It's not any of that. It's a dude who had a bad day. He had a mental break. He snapped. And it's an upstanding citizen who has been a good father and a good husband for most of his life. And things got out of hand. Things got away from him. And he went home. And on the way home, he stopped by and picked up a gun. And he shot his wife, shot his kids, and shot himself. That's what it is. The vast, vast majority. And we can agonize all day long about how to prevent school shootings and how to prevent mall shootings and how to prevent theater shootings and how to prevent grocery store shootings and all the other shootings. But the reality is a 2-week waiting period to buy a handgun would prevent most mass shootings in the United States. A federally imposed 2-week waiting period would prevent most mass shootings because most mass shootings are, I had a bad day, so I'm going to kill my family. And it doesn't mean the dude wouldn't strangle him because he's, has a mistress. But, whoa. Bigfoot, Silver, Hide and Seeker? Cheers! Welcome to the chat. Bigfoot Seeker, Bigfoot, Silver, Hide and Seeker. Well, you have been added to the wheel. I love seeing new names. Thank you for joining us. But not only does that prevent most mass shootings in the United States, that prevents domestic abuse that prevents, it prevents all kinds of things. Just a 2-week waiting period. It snuffs out a whole category of gun crimes, of crimes of passion. Unless you already have the weapon, and then there's no shit all anybody can do about that. But that's it. 2-week waiting period, 30-day waiting period, 2-week waiting period, whatever. There used to be a cool-off period. I don't know if there still is a cool-off period. 5 days, 3 days, something like that. It depends. I don't remember what the specifics were, and it's probably different in every state. But federally imposed 2-week waiting period would solve a vast majority of the problems. It would not prevent tragedies, but I don't even think these count as tragedies anymore. These are just, shit. It happens. This is just like, it's tragic, but it's not a tragedy. Tragedies are unexpected, unexplained disasters that befall on people. But these shit like this, it's predictable. It happens again and again and again and again. It's predictable. It's not even. I don't know if it's tragic, but I don't think it counts as tragedy anymore. It just is what it is. Good night, Phil. Good night, Phil. Biden made the argument. I just saw that? What did I see? What did I see? Biden made the argument. What did it say? Something about F-15s. What? Bourbon Baller. Did we have 562 now? We do. 562. Cheers, Bourbon Baller. That's a new name. A new name to add to the list. Biden made the argument that F-15s and made that argument using F-15s and nuke. Don't recall that winning the wars in the Middle East against the dude in flip-flop 50-year-old rifles. That is a whole nother discussion. F-15s and nukes. I don't remember hearing Biden make that argument, but I've been saying that for years. We have flying drones, and you're not the kids from Red Dawn for 2 reasons. 1, it's fiction, and 2, that depicted an invading army, not local to the United States, and like there's a whole nother thing, but mostly because it's fiction. You're not those people. Those people aren't you. But if you also recall, what we won in Iraq was the war. What we lost in Iraq was the peace. If that is something, if you want to divide it that way, we were largely unable, with the troop forces that we went in with, to secure and pacify the region, because we didn't go in with enough men. We didn't go in with enough troops, and the mission wasn't necessarily to occupy and pacify. The mission was to go in and get oil wells and oil rigs and prevent them from doing what they did in the first Gulf War, which was lighting everything on fire. So the rifles were not the problem that we faced after the second Gulf War. It was the bombs. And also the training of the militias, actual organized militias, the training of the militias from the Iranians, and the fact that they just disbanded the army and sent a whole bunch of people with military training back into their homes, and they were like, fuck this. That was a woefully mismanaged, that's a whole nother discussion too. It was a woefully mismanaged war. Well, I take that back. It was a well-managed war. It was a woefully mismanaged peace. There you go. Great shot. Alec Bradley is one of my favorite cigar brands. That is what we've got, as a matter of fact. Alec Bradley cigars. We have and what I really liked about this sample pack, it was 4. Actually, these are not all Alec Bradleys. These are not. This is an Alec Bradley bag, But this is a, yeah, they are. Alec Bradley, Alec Bradley. This is a Blind Faith Alec Bradley. And this is a, okay, yeah, it's just had a weird label. Kinstugi brand, or labeled Alec Bradley. So what I liked about this is it had the ratings of the different cigars, so I can see what it is that I'm giving people. And the Kinstugi is not on here. But the one that I did pull out, the red label, is on here, and it is a 90 rated cigar. So I will be throwing that into the box. And cigars go, our whiskey and cigars go really good together. I'm not saying that. I'm not a big cigar smoker, but I do like at the end of an event or whatever. I like to plop my chair down. I like sitting in the woods. You know, and I'm kind of in the woods just outside the distillery. I like sitting out there on the front patio in the woods. I'll enjoy a good cigar and just relax. So there's that. Thank you for the sub, Bourbon Baller. I do appreciate it. You are on the list of the Wheel of Fame, Doom and Fame. The Wheel of Doom and Fame will be spun next week on June 4th during this show. I don't know what the topic is yet. I'll come up with something by Saturday or Monday. I'll come up with something by Monday. And we will discuss something. I don't know. Maybe we'll discuss cigars. Maybe I'll have a guy on and we'll talk about cigars. Maybe we'll talk about, I don't know, some other philosophical idea to unpack ideas. I like unpacking ideas. And like I said, this is not drunk philosophy. This is drinking philosophy. This is chilling out and having a good time. I am not drinking nearly enough to get drunk. And in fact, I don't really like getting drunk. So this is an open discussion. I like ideas. I want to consider more. Because one of the fun I don't know, fun. One of the interesting things about this is considering the risks and pitfalls. Like let's theorize. Let's imagine in a world where we didn't have the Second Amendment, where Hillary Clinton was elected president and she, by fiat, repeals the Second Amendment. She suspends Congress and repeals the Second Amendment and reinstalls Congress, and the Second Amendment's gone, so blah blah blah. Okay, let's say that. some fantasy dystopian world that Fox News and Newsmax and Max invented. That's what happened. What would happen after that? Then what? What's next? Like, would they then write a law that says all guns are now confiscated? How would that happen? Like, they've been saying since 1995 that they're going to take your guns away. Never has it happened once. Never. In fact, in this bag right here, you can see all the guns that have been taken away from everybody in the United States. In this bag right here, you see it? They've been saying it for 25 goddamn years. So what would happen? Like, guns shall be confiscated. Australian style revocation of the right to own and carry private weapons. Like, that would take a 40-year cultural shift, a generational, probably a multi-generational cultural shift in the United States. If it were to happen tomorrow, if by some weird stroke of electricity, just if it were to happen tomorrow, if electricity hit the National Archives and the data glitched and deleted the Second Amendment, and like somebody noticed it like on Tuesday next week, they're like, guys, that electrical surge glitched it out and all the ink wiped out the Second Amendment. There's no Second Amendment anymore. Like, there would not be a law passed on day one. There wouldn't be a law passed on day 2. There wouldn't be a law passed on year 5. There wouldn't be a law passed on year 12. There would not be a law passed for at least 2 generations. It would take a 40-year cultural shift. So, and even if the law were passed, how would that be? How would that go into? Like local law enforcement, local sheriffs wouldn't even enforce mask mandates. They wouldn't even enforce a mask mandate. When local health departments said you need to wear a mask because the risk of contagion is high right now, sheriffs were like, fuck that. You can't make me. I'm not going to enforce it. Enforce it yourself. So what the fuck do you think would happen if the feds in Washington said any firearm needs to be confiscated by federal writ? you, you think that would make a goddamn bit of difference? Not a chance. Not a chance. No chance at all. It would take a multi-generational shift. So, I mean, exactly. Bigfoot, silver, hide seeker. Every 4 years, the Constitution would be revised because, like, if the president could just do that, suspend Congress, revise the Constitution, bring Congress back every 4 years. Hell, probably even more frequently than that. Probably like every 6 months. Talk about being like Venezuela, and it just can't happen. That can't be done. So, I mean, part of what I like to do with this is actually entertain like reasonable, logical both sides of an argument, like both reasonable sides of an argument. So considering the due process nature of suspending because when you talk about human rights are inseparable from humans and should only ever be suspended with good cause and due process. Those are the philosophical underpinnings of human rights. And when you look up human rights and human rights law, international law, when it comes to human rights, that's like the literal language from human rights organizations. They're inseparable from humans because human rights, they're inseparable and should only be suspended with due process and with just cause. If you don't have cause, like voting rights, due process, and just cause, if you don't have just cause and due process, you cannot violate human rights. Not legitimately violate human rights. And governments violate human rights all across the world all the time. Let's not be Pollyannish about this. But what prevents governments from violating human rights is a cultural insistence that these human rights are ours, that you're not allowed to do that. I'm going to move this chat over here so that I don't... Oh, I can't do that. I'll fix the window real quick. Do that. There, I can read it better here, and I don't have to keep looking over my left shoulder to read it. Move this up. Yeah, there we go. There we go. That's better. All right. Real take is real take. I'm very close to caught up, I think. I am. I'm very close to caught up. Yeah, I mean, Mr. Great Shot, I'm with you. I'm tired of there being just two parties out there too, but uh it would be really cool if the Harlem Globetrotters played a team other than the Generals, but that's how the league is set up. There isn't. Thank you, Lazy Nate. The hollow points are still legal. The wad colors are regulated, not sold. That's what I was trying to. That's the specifics that I was trying to remember. Because like one of them, like tears the flesh, and it causes you to die faster, if I recall, or just goes right through. Yeah, that's what it was. One of them goes right through, and it's dangerous when you're in a populated area. But the hollow points are the ones that go in and they stop inside you. They don't, or they go in and they stay inside you. They don't go through and through. That's what I'm trying to remember, or that's what I was trying to remember. But yeah, back to Mr. Greatshot. Sorry, I got out of order. I am too. I would love it if there was another party out there, but the way it's set up, there's a solution to that problem. Because check this out. The way it's set up, there's 537 representatives and senators. 435 representatives plus 2 in DC. Oh, 3. 535 plus 3 in DC, Puerto Rico, and American Samoa and Guam. I think those are the extra 3. So 538. There's 8. 538 plus 100 senators. The way you solve this problem is with 1,600 representatives and senators. Change the number of senators from 50 or from 100 to 150 so that you have 3 per state, and every year a senator from every single state is up for election. And you triple the number of representatives so that you basically have the same level of representations that we had back in 1917 when the number of representatives was capped, and then pin the number of representatives to be no less than the ratio of the lowest population per representatives in a state. So there's going to be some state out there that only has 1 representative because it's the lowest population state. Right now, it's Wyoming. So it's called the Wyoming Rule. So the number of representatives would be based on the population of Wyoming. You would have X number of representatives based on your population in ratio to the size of Wyoming's population. So big states would get a whole lot more representation, but also the middle states would get a lot more representation too. Wyoming, they're fucked. They still only get 1 rep. But everywhere else, we'd get a whole lot more representation, and it would end gerrymandering, and it would open up open up the representation so that it becomes too expensive to buy a majority of anybody anywhere in the country, because right now representatives are really, really cheap. So are senators. They're really, really cheap. But if you have a statewide election every single year, then parties wouldn't be able to focus on one state or another state. They would only be able to focus on one state or another state. So instead of having 30 states with senators coming up every year, you have 50 states. So there's 20 more senators. It increases the cost of every election for both parties by 60%. Who fills that gap? Either us sending money to the parties to run these elections in all the states, or it opens it up for smaller candidates and third-party candidates. And now, instead of having 2 parties which control the narrative, you have 2 parties and a 60% larger pool of representatives and senators, opening the game up to a whole lot more ideas and people. And that's exciting. It extends the bench, it extends the roster, it adds more people to Congress. Granted, we may have more idiots like Madison Cawthorn and Marjorie Taylor Greene and the Sarah fucking Palins of the world lurching their way into politics, but they'd be a small minority of the group that would be coming in. When you have 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 representatives, the idiots are going to be vastly outweighed by the competent middle ground professional politicians that know how to govern and they understand the law. And you're going to get a bunch of wingnuts on one side and a bunch of wingnuts on the other side and a bunch of moderate, reasonable, rational people in the middle. That's the 1,600 plan. We have roughly 1,600 representatives and senators, and that number goes up over time. As the population continues to grow, the number goes up over time. But I'm with you 100%. The idea of 2 parties ossified and polarized is frustrating as hell. But the artificial cap on the number of representatives and the constitutional cap on the number of senators, the number of representatives can be changed with the signing of a bill. That's a legal invention that just it created a cap. Senators, that has to be changed with an actual constitutional amendment. But representatives can be changed with the passage of a law. And if I were president for a day, I would do that in a heartbeat. I would draft that legislation, cram it through Congress, and have it on my desk by the end of the day. I don't know if I could do that as president, but that's if I were president and I could suspend Congress and pass a law all by myself, that's what I would do. But you can't do that as president. That's very, very much a cultural no-no. And that law would probably get struck down because, president passed a law without a Congress. You can't do that. That's unconstitutional. But, hey, I got a gun, so I can do it, right? I can do whatever I want with a gun. Presidents can do whatever they want. They're allowed. That's what the former guy told us. Anyway, but yeah, that basically, looking at it from an economics point of view, that basically makes it impossible to buy a majority. And it creates such a large market of ideas that it, by nature, increases the flow and rate of discourse throughout the halls of Congress, and increases the discussion among the population, and it just makes for a more dynamic democracy. And it also makes it really hard to do gerrymandering. It is really hard to gerrymander a district when you have 130 representatives in a state versus 35. Makes it really, really hard to gerrymander a district. Really hard. And I don't think Texas would go from 35 to 130. I think Texas would go from like 35 to, I think, 85 or somewhere in that neighborhood. We might, I can't remember if we go to 80 or if we add 80. I think California would add, I think it is. I think it's add. California would add 80. We'd add like 75, something like that. So we'd go from 35 to 110. They'd go from 40 something to 120, I think. But places like Kansas, Nebraska, that only have 1 or 2 representatives, they get like 3 or 4 added. It'd be a big boost to those guys because they get a tremendous amount of. Of course, it'd be easier to gerrymander those states because you'd still only have 3 or 4 reps. But solve that problem when you get to it. First things first. Solve the problems you can solve, and then create new problems, and then solve those problems. Anyway, on we go. The most important amendment is the 4th Amendment. 4th Amendment being, oh, you're going to catch me sleeping on this one. That's the securing your documents, warrantless search, if I recall. 5th Amendment being plead the 5th, the self-incrimination amendment, and 6th Amendment is quartering troops. You can correct me. Well, I know you can. I don't need to tell you this. Correct me if I'm wrong, Muscle Shell, by all means. See, I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea. Amended for clarification. I don't think it needs to be repealed. I think it needs to be amended for clarification in modern times because over the last 40 years, ideological groups with a specific agenda have wielded the Second Amendment as a cudgel to prevent common sense regulation from being enacted. I don't think it's necessarily having it isn't a bad thing, but it is a bad thing if it's used as a cudgel to protect people who commit heinous crimes. And then shrugging your shoulders and saying, well, there's nothing we can do about the slaughter of the masses because of the Second Amendment, then the only logical answer to that is that we need to do something about the Second Amendment. But I don't think it has to come to that because I think there's a generational shift that can happen over the next 10 years if, like I said, if the boomers continue to die off and the next 2 generations, hell, if the next 2 generations just stood up and voted now, there's enough, like Gen X, we're vastly outnumbered in Gen X, but millennials, Gen Y and Gen Z, they by themselves outnumber the boomers. And there's a significant chunk of my generation whose brains have been spoiled by the boomers before us, but there's a significant chunk of my generation that's also more in line with the generations that follow us than the generations that came before us. So if the millennials would just fucking stand up and vote, like this entire economy has been organized to benefit the boomers. Low interest rate environment that protects their Social Security, that keeps the Medicare costs down. That was all done to protect the boomers. And what does the low interest rate environment do? It increases the price of housing. Because if interest rates are low and money is cheap, then the cost of housing goes up because you're not paying for the house, you're paying for the payment. The price of housing goes up. The price of cars go up. The price of everything that you pay for that's paid in installments, like college. But that was changed because in order to take the burden off the parents, the burden was dumped on the students, and the students, in order to, part of this low interest rate environment, for banks to make money, because they're not making money off interest rates, they service the loans. They get the money from the federal government, they service the loans, and they get the fees. Those loans are at 6.5%, and they're not bankruptable. So the low interest rate environment that protected the boomer Social Security has created, 2 generations later, a student loan crisis. All this shit comes together. If the next 3 generations stood up and got off their ass and voted in line with their best interests and their values and their ideals, then shit changes. Different people get into office. Different bills go up the ladder. Different people are signing the bills. Everything changes. But the next 3 generations have to stand up. Boomers are voting at 70 and 80%. Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, the next 3 generations, between 60 and 40. That's the problem. That's the math that has to change. And it's changing. It's changing. It's changing quickly. Because, you're going to see this in about 10 minutes, but you're like 10 minutes behind the chat again. Thank you, Nate. I will catch up. I'm hurrying, I promise. But that's the cultural shift that's happening before our very eyes. America's getting younger and darker. Before our very eyes, it's happening. And that is the root of almost all of the kicking and screaming and desperate clinging to power that you're seeing right now from one group at the federal level and state level, for that matter, because the demographics are shifting away from them fast. And the lesson they should have learned in 2008 was to be more appealing to the next 2 generations. But the lesson that they did learn was do everything you can to prevent them from voting. And that's what's happened over the last 10 years. And it's going to be fun to see how that shifts as these next 2 generations stand up and start voting like their fucking rights depend on it, because they do. Thank you, Nate, for telling me that I'm about 10 minutes behind. I'm going to catch up. So Bigfoot, Silver Surfer, Bigfoot, Silver, hide and seek. Damn it. I snapped forward. All right, so I'm keeping my firearms. Nobody's taking your firearms. That's exactly what I was talking about. In fact, that's why I mentioned it earlier, that even if the Second Amendment was repealed tomorrow, nobody's taking away anybody's firearms, because it's not going to fucking happen. It's impossible. It can't happen. I mean, what mechanism do we have for that to happen? You would literally have to have military units going door to door. That will never happen in the United States. And I've just realized I say literally a lot. That'll never happen in the United States. That won't, because we won't stand for it. We won't put up with it. I mean, we wouldn't have even put up with it 3 years ago when it came for inoculations and making sure everybody had. We barely put up with it with the census. That's one of the most dangerous jobs in America, is being a census worker, going door to door, knocking on doors and asking people, how many people live in your house? How long have you lived in the house? What country were you born in? That is one of the most dangerous jobs in the United States. You think going door to door and taking guns is ever going to happen? Shit, you get fucking shot asking people if they live there every 10 years. Like, census workers die at a ridiculous rate. Nobody's taking your guns. Nobody's taking anybody's guns. I'd join a militia before I give this up, because I like hunting. Or at least I like the idea of hunting. I haven't been hunting in a few years. I've been too busy, but I'd join a militia before I put this up. I'd rather that. Like, joining a militia is a bad thing. I'd absolutely join a militia. If that was the price that I had to pay in order to keep my firearms at home, I'd do it in a heartbeat. Because, also I reckon that joining a militia would be relatively low impact, because why the fuck would you need a militia? You have a National Guard, you have a state National Guard, National Guard, and a Army Reserve, and a standing army. Well, what do you need a militia for? Like, okay, fine, I'll join a militia. Rifles in the kind that don't fall in the pistol category, 45 minutes top. Yeah, I know, right? 45 minutes tops. And most of the time, most of that 45 minutes is spent them going and getting the gun and packaging it up, attaching the scope. It's insane. It's crazy. Babies raising babies and not enough quality time spent nurturing relationships with parents. There can be a lot. There's a lot said for that, about personal time, civic clubs, social times, and being able to personally interact with other human beings. That is a good topic. Maybe that's a good topic for next week. Breaking down social, breaking down of social organizations. That might be a good topic for next week, because that's something I've talked with a safety doc about that a few times, and I've talked, but like, organizing communities is harder to do now, because we drive an hour each way to work. We work 9 hours, and sometimes work a little bit extra on top of that. So the time we actually spend at home out of a 24-hour day may be as little as 12 hours. So you don't really get a chance to know your neighbors. You don't have cookouts. You don't do bowling leagues. You don't have Kiwanis clubs. You don't have softball leagues like we used to have back in the 60s. The hollowing out of the middle class means your spare time that you actually have, you go out and do DoorDash or Uber Eats or Uber. You're going out and trying to earn a little bit extra money. So like, the social interconnections that we have kind of gets broken down. So it's a lot harder to just say, well, I'm going to run for office. You kind of dump that off on professionals to do that. And it becomes this, you become disconnected from running your own neighborhoods and running your own governments and just knowing your neighbors and having a social fabric. So that's a good conversation to have, but not for tonight. Thank you, Muscle Shell. I don't know if they're brilliant, but they're at least good to have. What are they hiding or distracting us from when there's a trend? That's a common concern, and it's a legitimate concern, but it's like, when it presupposes that the tragedy is instigated by someone in order to say, look over there. I'm less inclined to think that, because I'm less inclined to think that the tragedies are a thing that they're doing. It's more likely, and we saw this several times in the before time, when something insane would happen, in order to distract us from some other insane thing that was happening, like a report was leaking out of or a report was coming from the special investigator's office. So before that report comes on Thursday, I'm going to make an insane tweet on Tuesday so that the insane tweet gets all the oxygen out of the room so that the important stuff that comes out on Thursday, you don't see it. That's the kind of stuff that is the distraction. But when somebody goes into a Walmart and shoots up a Walmart, that's not a they're distracting us thing, because they're not sending a shooter into Walmart, I would hope. I'm not so cynical to think that that's what's happening, but I got to admit, it's not something that has never crossed my mind, but it's also, the idea that aliens built the pyramids is also not something that's never crossed my mind. It's just not something that's been deeply on my mind ever. It's just like the fleeting thought that a cloud goes across the sky and you're like, oh, yep, that's there. You acknowledge it, you see it, and you know that it's not real, or that it's just a cloud. Oh, Jesus, 20 minutes behind. I'm going to try and catch up. I'm working on it. Interesting argument. Not. Steve is back in the party. So Steve gets on the list another time. Thank you, Steve, for joining us tonight. Every year, interesting argument. Could not imagine. I know, right? If the president could amend the Constitution, the Constitution would have no meaning. It would be a document that has no meaning at that point. One of the things about our Constitution is that it's hard to amend, so that it has meaning and it has weight. But it also means that it has to be thoughtful when it is amended, because it's not an easy thing to do. It used to be we'd amend the Constitution like every 10 years, but that kind of slowed down. Slowed down when it became very hard to do anything. There's more to the Fifth Amendment. Fourth Amendment was search and seizure. Fifth Amendment was self-incrimination, if I recall. I mean, there's more to it, but that's the primary part. You have a right to no self-incrimination. Confront your. I'm going from memory, and I've got a whole lot on my mind right now, so I don't remember it specifically, but that's the high point. There's other stuff to it as well. A lot of amendments have multiple things to it. Okay, I was right about the search and seizure. So like I said, y'all can correct me all you want. That's fine. Are we there? I'm there. I caught up. Fantastic. Bigfoot Silver Hide and Seeker. Thank you for joining us, man. You are 100% on the wheel for next week. So come back on the 1st. Come back on the 1st, and I will spin the wheel. May the odds be ever in your favor. Where are we at now? 12:13. My goal is generally to endeavor to catch up chat by midnight. We are post midnight now. And since my chat's here in front of me, I can put my shades back on. Turn my light back up. Good, the bright one? Is that better? That's too bright. A little bit less bright. There we go. That's good. And get this down here a little bit. There we go. All right, so let's recap the Wheel of Doom and Glory. To get on the Wheel of Doom and Glory, you be a subscriber. You get into chat in one of our live shows. We had 4 live shows last week. We have tonight, tomorrow, and Friday this week. And then we have one more day in the live show, which will probably be tomorrow afternoon, when I'm bottling up the remainder of our special reserve. So that's, and every time you get into our live chat, not every time you comment in our live chat, but every show you get into in our live chat, you get on the wheel. So we've got people who are on the wheel 4 times, 3 times, 2 times. Several people tonight have gotten on the wheel for their 3rd time. And it's midnight, so Mr. Great Shot is hitting the sack. Cheers. Good night to you, Mr. Great Shot. The 3rd way to get on the wheel is to share a video, share the channel. If you share it in your YouTube, on your YouTube feed, I'll be notified that we've been, you share it and you tag us. I'll be notified that you shared the video, and I'll be able to add your name to the list another time. So in theory, if you were in all 4 of our live chats last week, shared all 4 of those videos last week. And then if you had boozy bucks to trade in, because you were in our trivia show and you won and you had 20 boozy bucks, you could have added 2 more. Boom, boom. You could have been on the list 10 times by now. Independent Joe has joined the night. Cheers, Independent Joe. I see you in the chat. You'll be added to the list. That's a new name. You'll be added to the list. I'm going to go on the honor system as to whether or not y'all are subscribers, because I can only see the public subscribers on our channel. If you keep your subscriptions private, I won't see them. But so I have to go with the honors on the honor system. I don't know if there's another way I can confirm that, but I can try. I can try. I don't know if I can confirm that any other way. I'm just gonna have to go on the honor system. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything to be a subscriber, so just don't be a dick and be a subscriber. Okay, that's cool. Okay, so that's a way to get on the list. All of that stuff, you can be on the list 10 times by tonight, and then you have tonight, tomorrow, with trivia. If you win trivia, you get 20 boozy bucks. Add 2 more. Then Friday, and then share off all 3, and then there's the live stream, a day in the life, and then you can share that. That could be 10 more. You could be on the list 20. You could be on the wheel 20 times. And right now there's like, I want to say 43 or 44 slots. So if you were, well, nobody has 20, but there's 44. Say you could, out of those 44, if you got in and you had all 20, there'd be 64. You'd have a third of the opportunities to win on the wheel of doom and glory. And what would you win? Well, let me tell you what you win. This is a sample flight of our whiskey. We have our double oak, our straight whiskey, and our special reserve. The bottles will be labeled so you'll know what you're drinking. They will come in this handsome treasure box. Ba-bum! This handsome treasure box, which I am currently putting together. And with that box, you will also get this handsome cigar. An Alec Bradley cigar. This is the, which one is this? This is the Connecticut cigar. Alec Bradley Connecticut cigar, which is made in, does it say where it's made? It doesn't. I guess it was Connecticut. I guess. But that's the style, the Alec Bradley Connecticut. So you will get a cigar, 3 samples of our delicious whiskey, a little note in that handsome box. We boxed up, packaged out, and mailed to you. So there you go. It's the first ever giveaway that I've done like this. We've given away full bottles of different types, but this is the first time I've given away a sample of each one of our available whiskeys. And that'll be next Wednesday on June 1st, our giveaway show extravaganza. You must be present to win. And next week, at the beginning of the week, I'll confirm who's on the wheel. So when you see yourself being mentioned on the YouTubes, you know you're on the wheel, and you know you need to hit the notification bell and a reminder to be present on next Wednesday's show. Because so help me God, if I spin that wheel and you're not here, I will go on to the next person. Don't test me. I am a dad. I will turn this car around and we will go back home, and Disney World will just have to wait until tomorrow. Yeah, but for real, I'll go on to the next person. I will spin the wheel again. And if you have, a third of the spots because you were diligent and you got your name on that list 20 times, man, you're going to hate life. You are going to hate life because all of the instances will come off. Well, no, hang on. Let me walk that back. I'm not sure yet if I'll do that. I might, if you're not present and your name comes up, I might just remove that one slice so you get more opportunities to be embarrassed. You may, if your name comes up, we spin the wheel and your name comes up a second time and a third time and a fourth time because you have a third of the slots. by the 5th time, you may have made it into the show already. And you know, that may be your opportunity to win, but that would be something. You get 5 in a row when you have a 30% chance of winning. What are the odds? I could work that up. In fact, I'm probably gonna, because I'm a nerd. All right. But let's wrap this up because it's after midnight. This has been a fun conversation. And as y'all can see, I am in no way, shape, or form hostile to the idea of having guns. I have my own. I have shotguns, I have pistols, I have rifles. I like guns. They're fun to shoot. I am in no way, shape, or form under some kind of mystical notion of what they do. They do not create a force shield around my house. Simply having it present does not protect us, my household. Having it present does not protect my household. Having a sign out front that says ADT is more protection of my home than this. 100% more. Because nobody knows I have this in the house. When I have an ADT sign, everybody knows that I have ADT. And this only works if I'm home. ADT works when I'm not home. So, you know, that's kind of cool about that. That actually does create a force shield around my house that people can't breach without alerting authorities. This does not create a force shield around my house that people can breach or cannot breach without alerting authorities. So I'm under no pretenses of what this does. It is a moderate to slightly above average threat to wild animals, especially boar and deer. I reckon it would be a high threat to cows if I leveled it at a cow. It's a very low threat to birds. I reckon it's probably a high threat to humans if I were to use it on humans. But, you know, the thing about guns is it's only dangerous in the hands of somebody who's dangerous. And how dangerous I am is completely an opinion of the person at the business end of the weapon. So I don't think I'm particularly dangerous to another human being because I'm not a murderous, crazy person. Although, I'll tell you this, every single person in the history of people who have told me that knives and ladders and chainsaws and hammers and cheeseburgers are more dangerous than guns, or just as dangerous as guns in the wrong hands, nobody has ever accepted a duel with me, with them having a cheeseburger and me having a gun. So at least some people think I'm dangerous with a gun. But you see, if the line of logic, if the thought process is that guns aren't dangerous by themselves, I mean, this isn't dangerous by itself. It is completely benign, unless it's loaded and in the hands of somebody who's willing to use it. Willing to use it being key. If you're not willing to actually use it, it's still not dangerous. It's just a threat. But if if you have a hammer and you have bloodlust in your eyes, the hammer's dangerous, right? You're dangerous with the hammer. But at 20 paces, me with my rifle, you with your hammer, I mean, who's in the more perilous position at that point? Clearly it's the person with the hammer, except that the person with the gun is not really interested in shooting you, just proving a point. And while you're busy wetting your pants and shaking your knees, and I'm laughing to prove my point that, like, you see what I mean? Like, you're in a more perilous position, clearly. Like, you dumb dingus. Hammers are not as dangerous as guns. And, like, everybody knows this. This is not this is not a controversial statement. Surprisingly enough, they've never once accepted my offer of a duel. I mean, it seems to me like a perfectly safe proposition. If a hammer's just as dangerous as a gun, that, you should be willing to accept a duel at 20 paces. And even if the duel is just to prove a point, that you won't accept a duel. But, me saying that the duel would be relatively safe because I'm not going to shoot you. I'm not a fucking crazy person. I mean, that kind of takes the whole point of the of the offer off and blows it out of the water, because now, there's no teeth to it. But I don't know where I started with that. What I was saying is I'm clearly not opposed to weapons, but I'm also not, guns specifically, but I'm also under no pretenses of what they do. They're not magic. They don't create force shields. They don't, you can't put a gun in your sock and then think you're going to be going to be able to defend yourself if somebody hits you on the back of the head and takes your wallet. And that's not how guns work. They don't prevent anything. They can stop it from getting worse at best. They're a response tool, unless they're clearly visible and you're standing there. But even then, you have to have it loaded and aimed and be willing to pull the trigger. So that said, I'm also under no pretense of what we actually do to protect our rights, and what our rights and the ways we actually do protect our rights. As I said it earlier, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it until the English language has no meaning anymore. You protect your rights with pens, paper, and ballots. You do not protect your rights with lead, steel, and bullets. Because if you really, really, really think the whole process through, if you have to pick up a gun to protect your rights, you've already lost your rights. They've already been taken, and you're fighting for something else at that point. That's the reality. So the goal is, with pen, paper, and ballots, to prevent your rights from ever being taken away to begin with. Because if it gets to the point where you have to pick up a gun, they're gone. You've entered into a different world entirely. And that is incumbent on us to remember and defend and get up off our asses, be engaged, be registered to vote, know where your polling places are, go vote, volunteer for local elections, volunteer to run the polls, volunteer with political candidates in local elections, school boards, neighborhood associations, water boards, municipal utility districts, all those things. Senators and national representatives at the national level were senators and representatives at the state level. People who run for the municipal utility districts eventually run for city council, and city council runs for state reps, and state reps become congressional reps. That's as if you're competent in your job, you work to get promoted to the next position. And that's not a bad thing to have professional politicians. We bitch and moan about people who are in politics for 40 years. You don't bitch and moan about mechanics who were mechanics for 40 years, or plumbers who were plumbers for 40 years. Or it's a good thing to have professional politicians who know how to make laws and know how to govern. You want that. What you don't want is dumbasses be getting elected because they have good social media presence, and they have no legislative chops, and they have no legislative office, and they have no legislative advisors, and all they have are social media teams. You don't want that. You absolutely don't want that. That makes for bad governance and bad representation. But all that said, that's how we protect our rights. by getting up, getting out, and voting, talking to people about ideas, sharing ideas, talking about topical things, and having discussions over a glass of whiskey and a couple of hot dogs. This is how you do it. Not by screaming at each other across barricades of the national monuments. That's not how you create a discourse and you create rational understanding between people. You have a conversation. Everybody sits at a fucking table. They sit around the table and somebody says something ridiculously dumb and you go, yeah, that's exactly what we need to do. We need to put more elephants on trains or whatever stupid shit they're talking about. I don't know. Like yeah, we don't want people that we don't want people voting twice at elections. But does that ever really happen? I mean, does it? I mean, let's talk this out and understand what the real problem is and discuss it and come to an understanding. And that's how you protect your rights, by having a discourse and sharing ideas and having rational, reasonable discussions. You don't protect your rights by picking up a gun. Because if it comes to that, so much more has already been lost. And you're no longer fighting to protect your rights and preserve your way of life. You're fighting for something else. And hopefully, it never, ever comes to that again. I don't expect it to ever come to that again. But also, hopefully, if it does, then we'll be prepared. It's not going to be something you like. So it's not going to be something that you like. You got a whole lot more to lose than you think. So as we say, get up, get out, get involved. Think with your whole brain, love with your whole heart, and drink your entire bottle of whiskey because that's what it was made for. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, children of all ages, thank you for joining me tonight. This has been fun. Good night to chat. I am going to go up the entire list and make sure everybody in chat gets on the wheel of doom and for glory for next week. And I'll see y'all tomorrow night for trivia. You participate in trivia, you're on the wheel. If you win, you can be on the wheel 2 more times. So there's that. Cheers to all of y'all. And good night.